Today is looking basically not just a roadmap, but also some of the things that we've been doing with Viking over the last year and what we're about to do with it. So we're looking at what essentially some things in there that you may not know about. So there's we've been adding a lot of functionality over a very, very long period of time, and sometimes it's not obvious what functionality that we've added. So I'm going to go through some things that you may or may not be aware of, and I'm not going to spend too much time on any one feature, just in case you're already aware of things, then we'll be moving on fairly quickly to another feature. I'm going to talk about some things that have just been released in the last month or so. So there's quite a lot that we've just done, and there's quite a lot of features that we're about to add in the next few months that are quite exciting. Beyond that, what I'll talk about is some longer term plans, and some of those are already in play at the moment, but some of the things that we're planning for the Viking platform throughout 2020 and into probably right through to the end of 2021. What I'm going to try to do throughout the session today is also try to make it as relevant as possible too. So wherever possible, I'll be showing you features, and then I'll be talking about use cases or potential ways that you might be able to use that functionality. Now, some of the functionality that I'll be showing you needs to be configured within the system, and if you don't know how to do those things, or you don't have the skills to do those things or the access to do those things, you can contact our team to discuss how you might be able to utilize some of those features. So the idea is for you to be able to see what we're doing, what we've done, and how to get the most out of Viking, because there is so much more than what you're probably using at the moment. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to be switching between screens, mobile and so forth, and I'll occasionally probably get the wrong screen up. So bear with me as I navigate between different parts of the screen. Okay, so a summary of the features that you may not be aware of, and I'll just talk about some of these just very quickly, then I'm going to go through each of them one by one. So we have a mail-in feature where information can be mailed into the system through email. There's our import function has expanded quite considerably, where you can update existing records. Some of you may not be aware, but you can actually get the system to automatically export to PDF and Word. There's versioning, which I think is a heavily underutilized feature for being able to create multiple versions and switch between versions. And one that people could be using quite significantly is QR codes to be able to create documents or to access existing documents by just simply scanning a code using your phone and the mobile app. So let's have some of these things I'll demonstrate, some of these things I'll just talk about with some screen grabs in the presentation. So the first one is mail-in, and there's a little bit of clutter on the screen here. But what I'd like to do is just talk about conceptually what mail-in actually means. What it means is you can create an email and an email address for a particular form. So on the left-hand side, I've actually got the form. It's actually a public incident claim form. And on the right-hand side is the email that I'm going to send into that form. So on the left-hand side is the configuration that needed to be done. And I'm not going to go through all aspects of the configuration, but I'll talk about a little bit of it. On the right-hand side, basically what we're saying is surname, Manessa's first name, Adrian, and so on and so forth. So it's basically an email with some information in there. When it's sent to the mcc.sandbox81 email address, it will actually create a new record within for the public incident claim form. So basically, if we look at some of the configuration side of things, we can define the email address that it's being referred to. We can map the fields in Viking, so surname maps to surname here, but sometimes you might have different names in the text descriptions. You can specify what workflow step when a document's emailed in, what workflow step you can control. You can restrict who can actually see this document, or in the form requirement section, and you can set a series of other fields like the subject and other items in there. Now, what are some of the other use cases for mailings? one that comes to mind is, let's say you've got an action that you want to notify someone about for them to do something, but they don't have access to myosh. They might be an external body, an external contractor or a customer or someone that you don't want to give them a login. So you can configure email notifications going out to people, and they could just simply, let's say it might be an action, please let me know when XYZ is available or whatever it might be. They can simply hit the reply button, type in a response, hit send, and then it can either create a new document or even update an existing document. So you could do it to assign an action to an external person, and all they have to do is hit the reply button and type in their response, and it will then go in, update the record. The other area that this can be very useful in is a kiosk type situation. So you could have a web form that's anonymous, that's on your internet, and it could automatically generate this format to then push into the system. So basically, the system can, most of you are probably familiar with the fact that the system can notify and can send emails out, and you can of course configure the formats of those emails, but the system can now generate and create documents or update existing documents by sending emails into the system. So there's quite a lot of fun things that you can do with that. I won't spend too much time on this one, but it's one that some of you may know about, but let's just talk about it quickly. Basically, you can import records using the system. So I'm just going to drag my mail across here for the moment. I'm in one of the modules, the documents module. Most modules have the ability to have an import button. Okay, so that's for and obviously export as well. Now the import's usually for bringing in new documents. But one of the things that you may not have noticed on the text is if you click yes when prompted, you can include the details of existing records on the screen in the template. So often when you import a record, what you're doing is you're clicking on the download template, and that's downloading an Excel spreadsheet in the format that you need to then upload it later, so you can upload records. But if you click yes when prompted to, when you download the record, it can provide you the details of existing records on the into the spreadsheet, and then you can modify the existing records. So this is particularly useful is if you've got some bad data in your system or you need to do some data cleansing. You want to basically be able to update existing records by running the import routine, which can extract all the relevant data in the system, modify it, and then when you upload the spreadsheet, the modified spreadsheet, it will then update existing records. So very powerful. You can also do this for your user lists as well. So in the administration section, you can also update existing records and different people. So if they've changed departments or divisions, you can again extract it out and upload. Okay, let's go through some of the additional features. So PDF and Word exports. So basically with the system, you can, it's like a mail merge. You can basically have a document within Viking, and you might want it to generate a Word document in a very, very specific format. So this can apply to doing things like risk assessments where you want a very nicely formatted document. It might apply for if you've got customers that want you to be able to export an incident report, but you want it to be exported with nice letterhead or even in their format. They may want something with the look and feel with what they do if it's to a customer. So you can take a Word document, which is basically what you're looking at on this screen at the moment. So what I've done is I've just pasted in a screen grab of a Word document. In here, you can see there's some merge codes that are in this particular document. So what this is saying is grab the project operations field and put the information there, and the same for all these other ones. So basically, all you're essentially doing is inserting a field into a form, or we can do it for you. And in this case, it's in the risk assessment one. The button on the field is going to be called, it's going to be a button on the form. It's going to have export to Word written on it. And it's using a field type of Word export. And then basically what happens after that is we run the Word upload wizard. So if you notice here, these these have to map to Viking fields on a incident report or a risk assessment in this particular case. So once we click on the wizard, what it'll allow you to do is it'll allow you to run through with a series of next and previous buttons, and basically there's instructions on how to do it, even built into the wizard. But when you hit the next button from here, this screen pops up, and you can then map project orientation to the field that's actually within the Viking form. In fact, it automatically maps it for you, and the ones that it doesn't map, you can either ignore, or you can map by clicking on the drop-down list and selecting it. Okay, so in practice, if I look at, and I'm just going to bring another form across for a moment. So I'm going to go across to the risk assessment module, where we've got some of these buttons in the actual system itself. Okay, once I've got that form there, I'm going to go into the appropriate risk assessment itself. I'm just going to go into any of these. Okay, so this is a risk assessment where basically you've put in a series of fields. These are all the associated risks that you've identified, but it's not particularly in a format that you'd want to basically give to somebody, because you've just got a fairly simple looking table there. But what you'll notice down the in fact, I might have gone into the wrong one. Just bear with me for a second. No, there we are, down the bottom there. So what we have down the bottom here is a field, and that basically relates to the field that I was talking about before, called Export to Word. So when I click on that button, what that's doing in the background, and it'll probably load it onto my other screen, and I'll just drag that across once it's actually loaded. But what it's basically doing is it's loading up Word, and it's basically formatting it in the format that we had in the Word document. So you can see that it's mapped project operation to that, assessment description to that, and so forth. And it had, that was just some text that was inside the Word document that was uploaded. And then there's just all the risks that were identified, but a nicely formatted table. So basically the export to Word and the export to PDF function can be used to create really, really nice output for the information that you've got within the Viking platform. Okay, so let's move away from the Word exports and let's move to the next topic. Okay, versioning is something that I think is quite a exciting feature, but again, it's relatively underutilized within the system at the moment. Probably people just don't know that it exists. So again, basically what you can see here is this is a section that can be turned on for any document type within Viking. So you can see with this particular one that's actually got 3 versions. So there's version 1, 2, 3. Now, the nice thing about this is you can just flip between versions by simply selecting the version by clicking on it, and it will then go back to a previous version of the document. And you'll notice that there's a button there that just says new version. So if I again bring my screen back, I'll just get rid of the risk assessment document. Okay, and I'm just going to switch over to my documents module. Okay, so this is a series of documents within the system. I'm just going to open up a document, so this one here. And what you'll see is that's the version section within the system. So if I click on version 2, it's now gone back to version 2, which might have different attachments. It might have different fields completed, a whole series of other ones. I can jump to version 1 and it'll take me straight to version 1. Okay, so simply users can click on new version and that would create a version 4. And then you'd modify it and you'd be able to jump back to version 3 if you wanted to. So nice, powerful feature. It automatically jumps to the latest version when someone opens the document. So it'll always jump to whatever version that you're actually up to. Now it's got a little bit more power than that. One of the things which it can be quite useful in is the training records module. So in training records, let's say you've got a competency and UMA has to do this competency maybe every year. So you don't want to have multiple records within the system showing up in here. Otherwise, it just clutters it with old records that you don't want to see anymore. There's a few other ways around it, but one of the nice ways that you can control this is, let's say I create a new record for user UMA, and it's the competency license for forklift class LF, and it's got a new date on it, and it's got new details on it, and so forth. Now, the system can be configured so when I create a new record with the same name and the same competency, it automatically creates a new version. You don't have to come into this record at all. You just have to create a new record, save it or submit it, and it will automatically become a new version. Now, that's just simply a configuration option that's actually specified within the administration section of the system. So I can go into the form, I can go into version, we can enable versioning, and that's as simple as it is to do that. And then we can map the fields that we want to make it. So when you create a new document and you have these two fields that are the same, it'll then automatically just create that new version, and the other document will become the old version, which you can still jump to at any stage. So versioning is particularly useful for those sorts of things. So you can create versions from inside documents, or just through your day-to-day usage of the system, it can be configured so it creates new versions automatically. The next part of the system is QR codes. Now, there's two different types of QR codes that are available. There's QR codes that can look at existing records, and there's QR codes that can basically create a new record. So the concept with QR codes is you put these QR codes on vehicles at different locations. You might have a QR code that goes onto a piece of equipment that might link to safe operating procedures, or might link to other inspections that you might be doing or need to do for that piece of equipment, or a series of other things. So essentially QR codes can be attached or etched onto things or stuck onto things, and then you can scan that with your mobile device. So over to my other screen, which I'll just drag over my mobile device, you'll notice on the mobile app, there's the item that says scan QR code. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just click on scan QR code, and you can see I'm just scanning the one that's on my screen. So as I hover over that QR code, what it's just done is it's loaded up a document relating to a piece of equipment in this case. So I'm currently looking at the hierarchy for that piece of equipment, but I can jump down and have a look at the details, which is what I've just clicked on. So I can now scroll down and see the details of that equipment. Now, in the equipment and maintenance module, I can even look at things like the current status, or I might want to look at the service history. So this is the services that have been done on this piece of equipment. Now, if I wanted to, I could actually now click on this one and open up what was done on that service. So immediately I might have a piece of equipment and I want to find out everything about that piece of equipment. Has it been serviced? Does it have child asset equipment associated with it? So it might have, in this particular case, it does. And I could again just click onto that and it would open that one up as well. So it's quite powerful that I can put a QR code on a piece of equipment, and then I can basically see everything about it. Now, myosh has a lot of links within the system, so that could apply to anything. So these links might have associated incidents or associated hazards or associated documentation. So you could do all of those things just by simply scanning that piece of equipment, the QR code, and then viewing all that information. It just happens that we've got in this particular one, we've got it configured to show child assets and services and so forth. Okay, so let me get out of there for a moment and I'll just jump to the next screen. Okay, in this particular case, what it's doing before I actually scan that QR code, is it's showing you creating a QR code to create a new document. So when you do that, you've basically got a more function, and then you can jump to the share option and see the QR code. So that's how you actually create one, and you can just copy it straight from there. Now, if I go and scan this QR code, this one's a little bit different. Let's say this one's on a piece of equipment again, but I want to do an inspection on that piece of equipment. So again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the scan QR code. Okay, I'm going to hover over the QR code itself, and now it's opened up a new document. So the other one was an existing document. This is a new document. Now, in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to jump to, let's try that again. I think I've clicked on the wrong thing. I'm going to jump to there, and I'm going to look at the details of that, of this particular one, so I can see who's accountable and I can fill out all the relevant details. But I might also want to go in and go to the actual questions themselves. So now I've got all the questions that are available, so I can tick yes or no. I can, let's try that again, okay, or I can click on more details, and I can take photos from the gallery and so forth. Again, if I go back to this section up the top here and press there, I can go into any of those details and sign off things and so on. So, and get locations. So that get location, which you may or may not be aware of, allows you to put a specific address in there if you've got location tracking turned on. I'll talk more about our geofencing and location tracking a little bit later in the session. So straight away, you've got a QR code, you put it onto a piece of equipment, and then it's there. We've got customers that are using QR codes out there where they're scanning equipment to make sure that, for example, that the vehicle's done a pre-start check. So you could be scanning your looking at your equipment, seeing what has been done to that equipment and whether it's actually allowed to travel into the particular area. Okay, so let's move past QR codes and let's talk about recent features that are actually now available that have only just become available in the last month or so. Okay, so for looking at these things, we've now got conditional questions within inspections, but that actually expands to also conditional emails that can be sent out on answering inspections. We've got new field types for talking to other systems in real time. So for example, you can, and I'll go through it in a little bit more detail, but you can actually search another system, an external system in real time, and retrieve information directly into it. To set it up, it's a little bit technical and you'd probably want someone from IT to get involved, but it's just configuration. It's actually not programming. We've recently introduced the training matrix and training needs analysis. We've introduced field locking, and we've also added a fair bit to Viking Analytics, and I'll just go through some of these things again fairly quickly. So let's jump through conditional questions within inspections. So let me again find my relevant screen. I think I'll just close out some of these documents. I'm going to go to equipment maintenance, and from there I'm going to jump into, sorry, wrong one. Let's jump into inspection, sorry. And I'm going to go into a particular inspection. And in this particular case, it's going to be the forklift inspection. Okay, so what you can actually see here, I'll just create a new record, and I'll just move that over a little bit. Okay, so again, just the usual sort of thing. You've got some fields at the top, which I'm not going to worry about filling in. You can see that I can answer yes or no to different questions, and you can obviously configure all those answers. But some things that are a little bit new here. You can see that I've got yes, no. So what's actually happening here is we can now control visibility of other questions or other fields based on answering questions within an inspection. Okay, so something's gone wrong. You you've got a failure, you might want to say, well, what's gone wrong? And then you then have to tick all the things that have gone wrong, or you might have other text fields or whatever it might be. So let's have a look at how this actually works. So I'm just going to jump into the inspections module. Again, just bear with me for a second. I'm going to go to the actual inspection, which is this one. Okay, this is quite a big inspection, so it can take a little while to open. That was fairly quick. So you can see here, there's 1C. So that was based on this question, 1C. If I answered a specific answer to that, it then showed this field. So the visibility condition was placed on that field. So if I edit that field, you can now see there's field visibility conditions down the bottom, and you can have conditions for all sorts of things, but you'll now notice there's an add questionnaire condition. So in this case here, what it's got is if 1C, which is the actual main field, this is the question, forklift fitted with swipe card fob. If the answer contains yes, this field is now visible. So we've now got the ability to put a lot more visibility conditions and make the inspections just a little bit smarter, because they can because you can control what you see on the screen depending upon what people fill out on the form. One of the things where this can be expanded to is in the and I'll just get out of this form for a second, but into the record notifications. So if I'm in the record notifications, and I'm just going to go to, again, inspections, and I'll just choose a new notification for the moment. And whoops, let's try that again. Let's just choose the same one again. So this is where you set up your notifications. You give it a name, you say who it's going to go to, you have a template with the body of the email that's going to go out. So if I choose triggered notification and then edit conditions, again, I've got the add questionnaire condition. So what this means is I can put a condition on an email notification that will send an email out to a particular person when there's a failure. So a piece of equipment has failed, or there's a critical control that's failed, and it needs urgently being fixed. It can then send, you can basically put a condition on a notification that when they submit this form with this failed answer, it then email notifies the relevant people. So that's very, very powerful. The system can, rather than finding out further down the track when you review the inspection that you've had a major problem, you know about it straight away. Okay, so let's move away from that for a moment and move on to the next section. So that, by the way, this functionality is available now. So it's actually in the system right now and can be used. I'm going to talk about this one, and I'll see whether I can just quickly jump to it. Bear with me for a moment. That's one that I didn't preload. But basically what this one is doing, and I'm going to try to talk and log in at the same time. What this one's basically doing is it's allowing us to search for a particular word. And in this case, it's searching ChemWatch. So ChemWatch is the external system. Okay, the external system, then once I come up with, I've typed in hydrochloric acid, I've chosen load options, and then it comes up with a drop-down list of all the items within ChemWatch in this particular case, but it wouldn't have to be ChemWatch, it could be many, many other types of systems. When I choose the option that I want, in this case it's just hydrochloric acid 1.1:1, it then let's try that again. It then automatically populates the rest of the fields within the actual document. So again, this is straight configuration, and it's basically allowing you to get information from other systems in real time. So very, very, very powerful in what it can do. Now I'm trying to load the system on the other screen. Let me just see whether I can show this. Just bear with me for a moment. Okay, so I have to be in edit mode, of course. So in this particular case, I'm going to type in, again, let's just try it. Okay, so once that loads the options, I can now see all the ones that have hydrochloric acid here. I choose the one I want. And once I've done that, what you'll notice is it's populated all that information about hydrochloric acid. So that could be going back to a work order in an external system, for example. So you might be searching for a specific work order that's relevant to something that you're doing that you want to automatically update into the system. So that's certainly doable. So again, that API field functionality is available now. It's a little bit technical, but you may need some IT assistance configuring it, but it's nice. You can search for things and populate things. Let's move onwards. Okay, we've done a lot of work on the training records and training management module to allow us to have essentially a training matrix and needs analysis. Again, this is available now. It's been made recently implemented in the last couple of months. What you'll notice, and I'm just going to jump over to our dashboard once it loads. I'll show you how you can run these reports very, very quickly. Again, I'm not going to spend too much time on them. Okay, so in the reporting tab, basically you can run a training matrix or a gap analysis report. And these can either run straight onto the screen or they can run straight to Excel. So if I want to run one straight to the screen for a training matrix, I can just simply choose Run Report. It's actually loaded on my other screen. I'll just drag that over. And then basically it runs. So what's quite nice about this is the export to Excel has the identical format. So you can see it in Excel really nicely as well. And Excel's a nice way of printing it. Now, if you want to create it, if you want to edit one of these or create a new one, it's very, very easy. I'll just do the gap analysis one before we go too much further. Again, I'll just bring that window over that it's loaded. And essentially, you've now got the name, the occupation, secondary occupation, the training that's required for the position, the training they've completed, and the training they're still required to do. Okay, so my window's just a little bit bigger than the actual screen. Okay, so to set these up is relatively straightforward. You can simply create new ones of these. You can specify whether it's a gap analysis or a training matrix. You can give it a title. You can go through, you can filter on different things and set a series of options up, and then basically you're there. There's a little bit more work behind the scenes to actually get it to work. You can, in the administration section, you've got to do a bit of configuration to say which, for a given occupation, what are the competencies that they need to achieve. But again, I'm not going to spend too much time on that today. I just want you to be aware that the feature's recently been added and exists within the system. One of the things that we've introduced relatively recently is a feature called field locking. Okay, and I probably don't need to go into the system at all, but this is something that you won't have access to, but we, as the vendor, do. One of the things that's happened from time to time is people have gone in, particularly people with high level of access, they've gone in and they've changed a field or deleted a field or done something to it, then that's caused maybe issues on the dashboard because that field is being used on the dashboard or it's being used elsewhere. So then in many cases, you don't necessarily notice that straight away. It does give you warnings in many cases, but a lot of people, when you see information on the screen quickly, you often ignore it because it's because there's so much information being flashed at you all the time. But what we've added is a feature called lockdown. So what we can do is what we have done is we've locked fields down in your system to prevent you from changing fields that are going to impact the functionality elsewhere. So this is for stability. This is to make sure that you can't break the system. You probably still can break the system, but to minimize the chance of you breaking the system through configuration. Okay, the next thing I'm going to show you, again, very, very briefly, is Viking Analytics. We're actually making significant improvements to the Viking Analytics dashboards all the time. And what we've actually introduced is a series of new, and again, it's just loaded on my other screen, so I'll just drag it over here for a moment. I'm just waiting for that to load. What we're basically doing is we're adding new functionality, new widgets, nicely formatted widgets that are now available. So a lot of things that are comparing the current year to previous years and variances. So this is the percent change from the previous year. So green is highlighting that it's actually an improvement. Red is, in this case, it's not a good thing. So basically, you can look at this information, but you can also format these things in place. You'll notice that there's like little arrows here that allow you to see different formats and so forth. I'm just going to quickly flick through some of these tables, but and I think Nigel's probably going to cover more on and he has done, if he's not going to, in future webinars where he'll show more of these dashboard widgets. But just flicking through some of this fairly quickly, you can sort of see here that we're getting a lot more information on the screen. We can see a lot of information of incidents and various trends for the different incident types. And again, you can change these formats to show different items. You can also show tables. You can drill down and drill across and filter different things quite easily. Again, just jumping to the next one, you'll notice in this one here, you can now look at all your injuries, or you can filter down to the individual ones you want to see. So I'm interested in medical treatment injuries. It's now showing me that information. One of the nice things that Viking Analytics has is the ability to forecast, in other words, do some predictive analysis of where you're likely to be in the coming year. Again, just quickly, some other parameters there, things like the ability to be able to see hands, feet, and so forth when you're looking at these things. Okay, so let's move past Viking Analytics and let's move on to the next subject. So let's go back to the PowerPoint. Okay, so these are some of the features and modules that are going to be available shortly. And when I say shortly, we're talking in the next month to a few months in some cases. One of the features that we're adding and has been commonly asked for is the ability to have a web page. Whoops, let's see if we can just keep that back to where it was. Is to basically get the system. So you've got forms within Viking. And some of those forms you might want to be able to put on a web page somewhere that's available to the public. Or available to users without having to authenticate with the system, without having to have a username and password. So what this Kiosk feature is going to allow you to do is extract some HTML code out of the form that's in the system and then paste that into an intranet or into a web page somewhere. And then when users see that web page, it will then have that form built into it. Now, there will be some limitations. It's not going to be able to use every single field type. It's not going to have all aspects of how Viking works with visibility conditions and so forth, where things hiding or not hiding. But basically, for your simple forms, you want people to be able to enter information. Say you've got a public incident where someone's come into your site and they've had a problem, and you want them to put that information onto a web page, and then once they put that information in, it automatically creates the Viking record at a particular workflow status, and notifies somebody, and then basically that can be handled within Viking with a person with a user account. So the Kiosk feature is a nice feature if you've got a large number of people who have to log incidents, but you don't want them to have logins. The Kiosk feature will be available in the next few months, where in fact, I believe about a month to 6 weeks on that one. We have an onboarding module. I'm not going to go through it in too much detail at the moment, but basically the onboarding module is when people come into the company when they've been employed. So you need them to be able to fill out a whole series of details. You need them to be able to enter their various different account details, and they've got to view a series of information, their tax file numbers, their superannuation funds they need to enter. So basically what this allows them to do is fill out all that information onto a form, and then once they've submitted that form, to then automatically submit that to HR or whoever it might be, to then vet that information and then update their systems. So basically it's a way of having a streamlined process of onboarding people into an organisation. It's a module that's available in beta and available for demonstration if you're interested in having a look at it. The next one I want to talk about will be available, we don't have a specific time frame yet, but it's a visitor sign-off module. It's going to be a separate mobile app that will typically run on an iPad or a tablet, sitting in reception or sitting at a particular location, where basically people can sign in. You can configure the system to go through and give them whatever information they need to see, maybe emergency exits and muster points and whatever else. They may have to click, yes, I accept all the terms and conditions and that I'm not going to smoke and all those sorts of things. And then they basically sign in. When they sign in, what it's going to do is it's going to have the ability to print off a card or a sticker with a QR code on that sticker. And when they need to sign out, all they need to do is scan the QR code and then they'll be signed out of the system. So we're working on a standalone mobile app, separate from our current mobile app, that will have that functionality into the system. And as soon as they've obviously signed in, then you've got that information and you can process it within the Viking platform. It'll be able to do things like notify the person that they're coming to see, to let them know that they're in reception or that they've entered the organisation. Okay, some of the other things I'd like to talk about are things like geofencing. One of the geofencing is basically essentially when someone enters a particular location, the system does something. So we've been working on this specifically for quarantine tracking. In fact, originally it was developed for lone worker type situations where someone is going from one location to another. You want to know when they get there to make sure that they've arrived safely. It can also be used for things like journey management. So you just need to know when someone's being at different locations and so on. So the geofencing is actually available in the mobile app, and it's available for configuration. We're still, again, finalising some aspects of this particular functionality. You'll notice in the if I point to the bottom section there, the account section of the system. Okay, you'll notice that there's geolocation tracking. Okay, so to enable this, a user you can't just track people because they've got the app, they actually have to turn it on. And they have to also enable their location services within, in this case, the settings within the iPhone, or in Android would be a different location. Okay, so basically as people enter or leave locations, you can basically set up, and I'm just jumping to another screen, so just bear with me for a moment while I track it down. Okay, so this is the other screen, and this isn't a test system, by the way, this next screen, so it's on a test server, so it can be a little bit slow at times. Just purely because of the environment we're in. But you'll notice that there's a section there for alerts, and when the alerts load, this is all based on people moving in and moving out of locations. So this was taken in context of COVID tracking. So when Jan, in this particular case, has turned off her phone, it's actually sending a message out to the system to say, well, we haven't been able to see a location in a reasonable amount of time. So Jane might have, in this case, turned off her phone and gone out of the geolocation, the isolation, the quarantine location, and then the relevant people would know. When Jane has left a particular address, it's actually going through and explaining that she sends a notification that it's left. Now, these can be real-time notifications. In this case, the alert's just going into a module called alerts. Now, how do you know where those locations are? Basically, it's tied to hierarchy. So if I go to, say, for example, a specific address, and I look at 1 June Street in Brisbane, basically what we've done is we've got the address and we've got enabled geofence. And if it's within a certain radius, if they've either entered or left within 100 meters of this particular location, it will then push out notifications. So other uses for it can be things like if, let's say, they're going to a particular site, it might pop up with notifications on their phone to tell them that there's specific hazards or there's specific PPE requirements that they may need to look at for that particular site. Okay, so that's the essentially that's a little bit about geofencing, but basically it's the user has to turn it on for it to work, and it has lots of applications for notifying people when they move into certain places or moving out. Again, if this is something that you need to look at or have a use for, we would need to talk to you about your specific requirements to make sure we understand what it is you want to achieve. One of the features that's becoming available relatively shortly as well is managing critical risks and controls through everyday processes. So let's say you do an inspection, and inside that inspection, you might have a question that asks about a critical control. Let's say, has the machine got the appropriate, is the guarding working on the machine? That might be a critical control. Now, if that relating to a critical control. Now, if that question is answered no, there's a failure with that guarding, it can then, or the system will be able to automatically update, for example, a critical control document and flag that there's an issue or that we've verified it, but in fact, it can flag that you've verified that control, so it's recording that. It can also flag that it's verified it, but it's actually failed. And then it can change the status of the control to needs attention or whatever the appropriate terminology is. And in turn, it can also set the actual risk that's in the system to a different status and then show on a dashboard. So you'll be able to have a series of dashboards, if you like, that will show critical controls, which ones are working, which ones have failed, and also how they relate to the actual critical risks. So management can see at any one time how the controls and risks are, what statuses they are within the organisation. So that's one that's coming in relatively shortly. We're doing a fair bit of work on that at the moment. Okay, looking at some of the, let's move to the next topic. So let's just talk about plans and projects. Now, I've already talked about embedded web forms, but that's going to be available sooner, so a little bit earlier than what we expected. We're looking at some rules-based functionality. So you make, you do something in one form, and it might update another form or do some action elsewhere. So a little bit like you've got rules in your Outlook. So you get a message from ABC. It might go, you might want to send it to junk folder or spam folder. You can do those sorts of things. Moving on from that, we have a major project that's actually already commenced, started a few months ago, to implement a new version of Viking. And we're looking into 2021 when that'll actually be finalised. One of the things that we've been doing is we've been making major changes to the back end of Viking that's completely seamless to what you're seeing at the moment. And one of the things that you'll no doubt be noticing is that we've had significant performance improvements that we've actually achieved through even at this early stage in the project. So we're going through, we're refining the code, we're making it work better, more efficiently. As part of this entire process, we're also looking at improved automated testing. So we have a large testing team. It's a fairly manual process. We also have automated testing as well. So whenever we make changes, and we make changes on a weekly basis, our systems automatically test to make sure there's not bugs. But we're expanding that quite considerably with a new version. The new version will have a completely new mobile app, which will reflect a lot more closely to what the web app does. So it'll be again written from the mobile app will be written from the ground up. It'll again be able to work offline, have a lot of the functionality, all the functionality that you see at the moment, but it'll have a new interface, and also it'll be a lot more streamlined. It'll be a nicer performing app. There'll also be, and we're doing a lot of workshops and research into this at the moment. We're reviewing modules. We're going through as an organisation and looking at the interface. And Sarah at the beginning of the session today mentioned that she'll be sending out a survey. Now that survey relates to the current interface. So what we're trying to find out from our customers is what you like and what you don't like about the current system, basically, and in areas of usability. And we're taking that feedback, and the feedback from our internal team, the feedback that we're sending out to our customers, we're taking that, and that's helping us basically improve the web interface, make it more intuitive, and make it so, essentially we want to increase and improve user engagement, make it so it's even easier to use than what it is at the moment. That brings me to the end of my session today. So we've covered some things you may not know about that we've been there for a while. We've covered some recently new features. We've also looked at things that were about to be implemented in the next month or two, and then what we're planning in from 2020 through to 2021. Okay, Sarah, do you want to facilitate the next component, the questions?
Yes. So first question is, does the export to Word function exist now?
Right. Yep, it does. Yep. So that functionality exists, and you can configure it to export to Word, depending upon the version of Viking that you have. If you're using Classic, some of these things you might need to get us to do, and we may need to quote on. If you're a custom user, you can, and you've had the appropriate training, you can do these things yourself.
Okay. The next one just says conditional questions, but I think that you were talking about conditional answers and conditional notifications, but can there be conditional questions too?
Yeah, absolutely. So based on questions will be conditional based on answers to other questions. So depending upon certain things within the form, the questions themselves can be, the actual questions themselves can be conditional too. So yeah, absolutely. So essentially there's what we call visibility conditions. A question will display, or another field will display, or a question will display, dependent upon whatever's been filled out elsewhere within the form. So absolutely.
Okay, Ian asks, it's the chemical register. Wouldn't you need to be subscribed to a chemical data system for this to work?
Correct, that's right. The purpose of showing you that functionality was actually to show you that we can talk to external systems. So the external system might be an ERP system, like a maintenance system that you're using to be able to search for work orders. You'd have to have that system within your organisation. The same with things like ChemAlert or ChemWatch or any of those other types of systems as well. So, but what it was designed to do was to basically say, yes, you need to have another system, but we can talk to other systems in real time. As opposed to just updating in the background like we've done previously. So we can integrate with any system pretty much. That, in fact, there's very few if any, that I've come across that we can't. But that usually involves things that happen in the background. This was actually things that happen in the foreground, like being able to search for something in an external system. But absolutely, you need to have that. You need to have subscribed to that other system. That was just an example where a customer had actually linked to Chem Alert in this particular case.
Okay, so Steve asked, does the geofence work for lone workers outside of coverage?
No, it won't, but it will work as soon as they're back into coverage. So that's obviously a limitation. So you need to have some sort of coverage to the internet. So it would work as soon as it's got an internet connection.
Okay. Ian, your next question, I'm going to get that answered after the session because I think we need to talk to Justin about that. So we'll look at that later. What will be the process to upgrade to the new version of Viking, and will the mobile be available under the current Viking platform?
The process to upgrade to the next version of Viking, to my knowledge, it will be seamless. It may just have a different web address that you access. And in fact, to my knowledge, both versions of Viking will still be available simultaneously when the new version becomes available. So what we've done is we've split the back end, so that's your database and the logic, away from the front end. So what it means is we can actually have multiple clients associated with our system. And in fact, even new looking interfaces. So getting back to the question, you might need to use a different URL, but you will potentially be able to use a combination of both the old and the new at the same time if you want to. So there's nothing from and that's the nice thing about Viking, is because it's all configuration. We don't have to go through major upgrade processes from the customer's perspective. It just is a seamless type process with very, very minimal effort to upgrade. Obviously, you might have to manage the change within your organization to communicate the new version and that it might work slightly differently.
Great. Okay, so Jamie asks, does the training matrix automatically update with review dates?
The training matrix, yes. So you basically configure it based on dates and it'll update. So if the date's passed, it will automatically show that it will have a cross against the name or whatever the symbol is. So yeah, it does update as dates change. The system updates accordingly, and it's also very configurable.
Okay, we don't have any further questions. I'd just like to reiterate that the feedback survey link is in the chat, and we really appreciate that feedback. It's very valuable for us for the new developments, and also a form for joining future user forum registrations for myosh users. And Adrian, I thought we might try to make this recording, we might cut it up into a series of smaller videos so people can jump to specific functionality and share that with others if they need to. So that will probably be out tomorrow. So if there's no further questions, we're pretty much on the hour. And do you have anything else to say, Adrian?
No, just thank you everybody for your time. And if you want to find out more about these features, to contact our team.
Great. All right. Thank you everyone for joining us today. And I'll see you all again soon, no doubt. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Adrian. Bye.